Yep, I'm gonna let it go live for a bit. Make sure there's no problemos. I usually like to give it a minute live. So I was doing a test recording of this stuff, and the reason I usually give it a minute is because like 40 seconds in, it was like something stopped unexpectedly, and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
good.
it happens every once in a while. I
Sure.
mean, it's rare, which is all I can ask for, honestly, at this
True.
point. Uh, did you manage to find a lot of notes for your?
I mean, considering they're one of the highest selling artists of all time, yes.
Wow.
I mean, once you're over 100 million records sold, then yes, you are in that
What's
club.
100 million?
it
I mean,
is.
come on.
It is a number.
It's like an imaginary number.
I mean, all numbers are imaginary. You have to
Dude,
imagine them
you
to
don't hit me
understand
like
them.
that. Don't hit me with that right now. What are we doing?
They're all concept. Numbers are just concepts.
Numbers are just concepts, brother.
Yeah, man.
You know what? I'm gonna try recording locally on the mixer as well.
Okay, great.
I don't even know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna just nothing has changed. I pushed the record button to no fanfare or changing of color.
I was really hoping mostly for fanfare.
Nothing telling me it can't record. Whatever. I'm just not going to record locally unless I am recording and it just chose to not tell me even for 1 second.
Who knows?
Whatever. That's
Not
fine.
me.
Why don't you go ahead and do a countdown for us, Nick?
3, 2, 1.
Here I am. Podcast like a Totem Talks.
Okay. Now, so the whole time we were doing the little intro theme, I'm thinking he's going to do Rock You Like a Hurricane, but how's he going to do it? I was wondering, is he going to do
we
Pod
both
You
we
Like
both learned
a
together.
Cast?
Pod You that could have worked.
Yeah. But
that's more on brand, just being like just more forced in.
Yeah, right.
If anything, that flowed too smooth. Let's restart the episode.
Yeah, hold on. Run it back.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Totem Talks, Season 7, Episode 5.
That's
time we bugged out of here.
Yes.
And what a wild episode it was, as always. By was, I mean is, because it hasn't yet happened. We're beforehand.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no segments here. This is all happening at the same time, live as can be. But thanks for hanging out with us. If you are hanging out with us in person, get out of our house, please, our individual homes.
Yeah.
If you're hanging out with us on our live stream, welcome. If you're not hanging out with us on our live stream, where the hell are you? What could you possibly be doing that is more important than hanging out with us on this live stream?
Nothing.
We stream.
I'm offended just thinking about it. I'm getting heated.
We stream at least one day a week.
Yeah.
Try to make it Thursdays. Sometimes. Rarely does that always work out.
I mean, it is Wednesday currently.
It is Wednesday today, but Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday are the 3 we aim for.
True.
Best way to guarantee you're up to date with when we're podcasting, find us on Twitch or Kick or YouTube, Totem Podcast Network. You can look up Totem Talks and then just turn on notifications for when we go live.
That works.
Then you're going to get a little boom on your phone and it's going to say Totem Talks is recording right now. Huh. Get your ass in here.
Does it really say it that aggressively?
It does. I asked them nicely if they could be more aggressive, and they said
it's a personalized message from us.
Exactly. Not at all a generic message. It'll be very personal. I hand type them actually.
Oh, that's nice.
Before each episode, yeah.
It's a real human touch, the hand typing.
I do what I can. I can use a typewriter next time and fax it in if that's better.
Yeah, that would be fine.
I'm sure all of these platforms have an easy way to
Just
receive
like,
faxes,
yeah,
have
carve
them
it
go
into a
immediate.
cave somewhere, and then when
Perfect.
people find it, they find it.
I love it. I love it. I'm sure they'll find it exactly when we go live.
Yeah, odds are good.
Oh, Nick, you know what, man? You know what I want to tell everyone?
No.
I want to tell everyone that you're Nick and
Oh
I'm
yeah,
Pat. And this is Totem Talks,
that's me.
our 1-2 punch journey to find the greatest musical artist of all time. And Nick, did we do it this week? What
Oh
do you
well,
think?
I can't say that out loud.
Well, why
I
don't you tell
can.
us at least who we're covering this
Yeah,
week?
that I can tell you. So we are bugging out today, and we started things out with Alien Ant Farm, and before all of the haters come out, I'm aware that what I'm about to say next is in reference to an arachnid. I know this, so just deal with it.
But like, they're still bugs.
I don't know. I don't know what counts
But
as.
I would
Does
consider like
bugs include
arachnids
insects and
like
arachnids? Because there's going to be someone like, well, actually, scorpions, who is the second artist we're covering, are arachnids. I know.
but they're all
I know.
bugs. The way that I look at it, would Timon and Pumbaa eat them? They're bugs.
Okay.
It's a foolproof method.
You
If
know,
Timon and Pumbaa would eat it, it's a bug.
gonna
If
start
Timon and
living my
Pumbaa
life that
wouldn't
way.
eat it, not a bug.
Okay.
Would they eat a scorpion? Yeah,
Hakuna
it's a bug, a
Matata.
spicy bug for them. Would they eat like a tuna fish? No, not a
No.
bug.
That's true. And thank
Yeah.
goodness I didn't put my favorite band, the Tuna Fish, in this episode. That wouldn't have made much
I'm
sense at
glad.
all.
I'm glad you didn't. That would have been catastrophic.
It would have been. I would have been fired probably.
Yeah, I would have immediately pulled you from the podcast. Would have been a one-man show. I did actually tell everybody, like not the people listening, actually probably some of the people listening, that we were replacing you with Freddie Prinze Jr. I made the announcement.
I mean,
I figured you'd be
unexpected, to say
okay
the
with that
least.
if I could somehow pull Freddie Prinze Jr. to be on the podcast,
Yeah, I mean,
at least for like an episode.
I understand. I understand.
So, Mr. Prinze Jr., if you're available, Nick would love to just step into the producer role for an episode or two, let you in the spotlight.
Okay.
I would also step into the producer role. I would let him have a one-man Totem Talks podcast.
I mean, that was his prerogative.
We just produce off camera while Freddie Prinze talks about music for a couple
Would be
hours.
kind of boring, but I feel like you need to have someone to play off of.
Well, that's why we bring Scooby.
Okay, sure. I'm up for that.
Or Freddie Prinze Jr.'s loving wife, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Oh, she was in a movie I watched recently.
Was she? Which movie?
Cruel Intentions.
That's the movie, man.
It is quite a movie.
That is the Sarah Michelle Gellar film.
It is quite
other than the Scooby-Doo franchise.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Wow. Maybe one day we'll cover that on our other podcast, Popcorn
nice.
Perspectives. After dark.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll need a little time to process that one before I rewatch it.
That's fair. That's once we get through a lot of like, less risque films.
Okay.
And then we start to get into the I was gonna shorten the name, but calling it PP After Dark doesn't sound right. Anyway, Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Okay. Alien Ant Farm is an American rock band formed in Riverside, California in 1996. And they're still active today, 1996 to the present day.
Good for them.
We covered 3 albums. We started with Cheeky Cheeky, the debut album Greatest Hits, which came out in 1999. Not the first time we've run into this, but it's always a little. They're clever.
Yes, it is. Although I'm gonna be honest, there was a brief moment during which I panicked, and I was like, "Was there an album called Cheeky Cheeky?" And I missed it. Like, did I read everything wrong?
That I'm so glad I did that. Then that
yeah,
makes me happy.
I know.
We followed that up with Anthology, which came out in 2001, and then we wrapped things up with Always and Forever from 2015. And I have to just announce real quick, during the week that we listened to these and are doing this podcast, they have announced or hinted or not unofficially announced a new album coming out in 2024 called Mantras.
Interesting.
So there's been no like official information. There's been like basically we're recording this on Wednesday, January 17th. I'll just tell you.
Yeah, sure.
And this Friday, so the 19th, is when they're supposed to be doing some type of album announcement.
Okay, interesting.
So, that's
We'll
of
stay
course
posted.
the week that we get them is like the week they finally, since 2015.
Of course.
Now it's like, oh, by the way, so, whatever, that's happening.
Sure.
We couldn't change our schedule by the time I saw it because I saw
Certainly
it
not.
at like 2:30 p.m. today.
Okay, but good information to have.
Of course. And I guess, Nick, I mean, I did my announcement, I did my talking. I'll take us into greatest hits.
Yes, please.
If you know who Alien Ant Farm are and you're not like an active fan of them, you know one song, which we'll talk about in the next album. But you have
Or
you kind of have who they are in your head. Like they'll do like a new metal, like almost pop punk, but not really like rockish sound. And in this album, it's full on like post grunge. I think is the best way to like heavy post grunge. And a couple things become very obvious to me pretty early on in this album. It is self released and it's every bit of a self released album from 1999, as in quality is questionable at times.
yeah, but
Not
like,
terrible.
good for a self-release. I think.
Yeah, good for a self release, but you can definitely hear some quality hiccups.
You'll
throughout.
notice the difference between that and the next one.
And two, they are very much trying to be something they're not on this album. There's like screaming on this album at parts. It's like they basically dipped their toes in to a bunch of popular genres at the time in the post grunge world, with like the almost metal, almost like emo-ish at times, even though it's pre-emo music.
Sure.
Just kind of like dipping their feet in a lot of genres and doing them to mixed appeal to me. I think that they sound decent. I think that the bass sounds better than some of the other instruments, I'll say. The vocals, I don't love his voice.
Yeah, but
he's got a good range in his voice.
He's got talent.
He's got a lot of talent. I like his voice more later. In this album, though, I definitely notice some struggling moments for him. And granted, the stuff he's doing on the album with the screaming and the going up and down in his range and changing genres constantly are not easy things to do. So I'm not knocking him for that. Mm-hmm. I get why it doesn't sound that great, but it doesn't take away that it doesn't sound that great. That's all.
Sure. Okay. Well, in that case, I mean, everything I looked up about this as I was getting ready to do it, and I had to find it on YouTube because it's not anywhere else.
Correct.
Same with her most recent album, actually. I don't know if you got that from too. Okay. And everything I was seeing is that it was mostly kind of classified in the new metal sphere, which is a giant red flag for this show. And while there were moments where I would say it was identifiably new metal, it was just kind of something that blended into all of the semi-heavy music of the late 90s, early 2000s, like everything in the alternative metal, new metal, hard rock, post-grunge sphere of the time. Like it just blended into that.
I don't know. New metal is such an interesting classification for that for me, because when I think of new metal specifically, I think of a lot more like spoken vocal or kind of rap, but
yeah.
This is not. He's singing pretty much the whole time. Yeah. I guess you could say this is like closer to the Linkin Park version of new metal, if it's new metal.
Yeah, well, here you go. If you look at their main wiki page, the first three things that classify their genres are alternative metal, post grunge, new metal, and like I said, in that general sphere of what bands were releasing in the late 90s to early 2000s. It mostly just kind of blended into the background for me without being either good or bad.
Sure.
Which for an album that could be classified as new metal has now become, at this point in time, the best new metal album we've ever covered on the show. Low bar, low bar,
It is a low
but
bar.
they managed to get over it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't necessarily my vibe, but I didn't think it was bad.
No,
I
I
didn't
didn't
think it
think it
was
was bad either.
particularly
I'm with you
great,
on
but
that.
I didn't think it was bad. And that kind of brings us into Anthology, which is their debut on a label. And as is pretty common with artists, we do get a handful of songs from their self-release re-recorded, including their cover of Smooth Criminal, which is their one really, really big hit that they had.
So interestingly enough, I'll tell you, the track listing, the official track listing on Discogs for the greatest hits
Mhm.
does not include
Oh
Smooth
yeah,
Criminal.
that's because it's listed as like Slick Thief instead or something.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna get
Yeah.
there, and you anti-joked
Oh,
me. You
sorry.
absolute filth.
I am. Um, but here's the thing. You hear the re-records, you hear the quality of the major label, and I think this is generally a successful transition. I think the album sounds better. I think overall it's something that I am not going to ever re-listen to, but for what it was, I think it was amongst the best of what we've heard in this post-grunge new metal alternative metal sphere of the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, I could really see if I was someone who did enjoy this style of music, putting this album kind of like near the top of my list of like my all-time favorites. Like I think it was as little as it was getting to me, what I could hear was this is, I think, this style done very well. I think there are good musicians here. I think there's talent here. And I think they just have kind of a different idea of what they like than I do. And that's all fine. But a good album, an improvement.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you on that. I think it's strong. I think this is a strong showing in the genre. And I think that what you're getting here is instead of a band in the first album that was experimenting with different genres, like I said, classifying the first album as strictly new metal is doing it a disservice because it's not worthy of the comparison yet.
Sure.
It's a group that will become new metal, figuring that out on the album, basically. And
Sure.
this is them figuring it out that they're a new metal band, but experimenting with adding in some like alt metal, maybe some closer to alt rock at times. So it's a small classification of difference there, but it's I think a very important one. They're more set in their ways. The professional production of it is coming through very obviously to
Mhm.
me, and because of that, you're getting a stronger overall product.
Mhm.
And then you're also getting the biggest hit from them, which is their cover of Smooth Criminal, which I'll be honest with you, based on the timeline, right? Because at this point we're 9 roughly when
Yeah.
this album comes out, and this was my first example of a genre shifting cover.
Oh, okay.
Like growing up, like I had never really experienced somebody doing this, and I remember really enjoying it. And I've talked previously on the podcast that I really enjoy when somebody takes a very famous song and makes it their own and makes it so uniquely theirs that it's almost incomparable to the original.
Mhm.
And I think they do that very well. I think it's impressive. And I really like the story behind it. I mean, I did put it as like a little blurb on my notes for them, but I just thought it was really cool that I feel like they came to Smooth Criminal the same way we come to a lot of our songs, which is they were live, like playing live in the area, and they just would like throw that riff in the bum 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 randomly through their set every once in a while, just like to keep fresh and
Mhm.
like. And they were eventually getting so many requests to actually play the song, like people yelling it, that they just started off the cuff doing it live, and then it formed into one of their most
Yeah,
famous song.
their iconic piece, yeah.
And I was like, that's so funny because like I feel like a good amount of our songs at this point are like we fuck around with some type of chord or we mess around when we're talking about something, and then it's
Throw a
like,
riff out
well,
there,
let's try it
see what he
doing that later.
follows. Yeah.
Let's just do it. So I thought that was a little cool moment.
Mhm.
But all in all, this was an enjoyable album. I get it. I thought the album definitely peaked with Smooth Criminal, but I think that like that song is probably like an A in the genre, and the rest of the album is probably like an A minus to a B in the genre. All well done. I think Dryden Mitchell's voice is way better here too.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's only been a couple of years, I think a lot of it had to do with writing better for his vocal, not making
Mm-hmm.
him like have to scream and go, like just letting
Sure.
him sing and showcase the range and showcase the talent. And I just think like the little bit of maturity and production that they put in the voice was good.
Yeah, definitely helps.
And then we'll go into Always and Forever. And here's the thing with this one. This is a very different sounding band. For better or worse. It's the new metal that they're most known for is like present only in the dreams of the audience at this point. It's much closer to like pop punk ish with like some
I would call it post grunge.
okay, there's
But like the pop rockier side of post grunge.
like pop, yeah, okay. That's a
I
good
mean,
way.
there's a comparison out here that's just dying to be made in terms of their sound, and I don't know if you have it as a note.
I don't
And I
have
don't
it as
want
a
to
note.
throw-
I didn't have a comp in the notes.
Their music has been Nickelbackified.
Yeah, that's
It was.
you
I
know
mean, it's
what?
like they were like, "Huh, okay, what were we doing in the early 2000s? What was Nickelback doing? Okay, let's maybe try to take our stuff and make it sound like that."
Reading my like overall notes, that's a very succinct way of putting what I have, which is basically just that like everything feels much more like generic. Everything feels a little more watered down. It doesn't feel as authentic as it did before. And here's the problem I have with that. They still sound good.
Sure,
So
they can
like
play. Yeah.
it's just this album, right? I'll get real for a second here before I turn things over to you because you already know this is not a huge plus for me. It's talent, pleasant to listen to, at best pleasantly forgettable to quote Nick on a lot of albums. Because I won't remember this, but this album right here is like one of my true fears as a songwriter. Is like I don't want to get to a point where I I have people thinking I'm writing based on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I'm sure they didn't set out to do that.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so that's like like truly like a deep seated fear of mine when I write stuff is like I want to make sure that I'm always writing super authentic to myself
Mm-hmm.
and like damn the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, damn the genre, damn the sound. And like that's something that I hope to always accomplish. And I know you feel the same way, but
Oh my God, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Like I said, my big note is that most of their sound here feels like it was like Nickelbackified. I felt like
sure.
it was definitely a move for the worse. The song homage. Look,
Yeah.
this was the moment where I got physically nauseous during listening to this album. I understand the sentiment. It's a song where they're trying to list off all the artists that they've loved and who've
Yeah.
inspired them and pay homage to them quite literally. And this was like the corniest 3-chord inspirational pop rock. Like, I mean, Dr. Luke could have written this song instead of Alien Ant Farm.
Sure.
And if that's not enough to make you want to vomit, I don't know what is.
I get it.
I mean, like that was where the band fully jumped the shark. I was just completely done at that point. It was so generic sounding. That's what I hate. I mean, I know you and I have some differences on this, but I will take weird, experimental, not great to listen to over not unpleasant to the ear, but completely soulless any day of the week.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I agree with you to an
Artistically, but
extent.
not sonically.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's it. Like I fully agree with you that like I fully prefer an artist who experiments and does things wild But if you give me a choice between what I'm going to have to listen to over and over again, give me this over something like that, because I can appreciate that. But sometimes you just want
Something that's
something
easy
less
on the ears. I
offensive.
get it. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just how I am.
I totally understand it.
Yeah. Cool. I guess it's time for me to give you some
Yeah,
factoids
would you?
about Alien Ant Farm. So something I thought was unique, the cool part. So, and this was, I had a lot of trouble finding this to confirm without a shadow of a doubt,
Okay.
because this is a band who, while they have sold reasonably well and are known-ish for their one hit,
Sure.
there's not a ton of information individually.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw multiple reports that former bassist Ty Zamora was the only original member of the band to graduate from high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I thought that was interesting. I also know that he did end up leaving the band at one point to go to college
Okay, cool.
and then rejoin the band again. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Moving on to the highlight. It has to be Smooth Criminal. Anthology, Smooth Criminal. It makes like the combination of Anthology and Smooth Criminal as a single makes up
It's like most of the
roughly,
sales.
it's like roughly 60% of their 5 million worldwide sales.
Yeah.
So it's an immensely popular song. It was a #1 hit on the US Billboard. It was a #1 hit in a bunch of places. It was a huge success for them.
Mhm.
And how else do you have anything else?
Yeah.
Low light. So in 2002, in May of 2002, the band was touring for Anthology and had a bus accident while they were touring in Spain. And the whole band suffered minor injuries, with Dryden Mitchell, the lead singer, actually suffering a fractured C2 vertebrae. And they had to cancel the rest of the tour. But unfortunately, the driver, a man named Christopher Holland, was 26 years old. He died in the crash.
Right.
So that was like the big low light for me that I saw. I mean, that sucks. That's a harrowing experience, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm glad that, the band themselves were mostly all right and recovered. And rest in peace to Christopher Holland on that one. The nicest. Let me tell you that this was the thing I searched for harder than anything else, because there was nothing. There was nothing on any of the wiki pages for them. There was nothing if I tried Googling it. Finally, I found a 24-hour charity stream from March 29th of 2022, hosted by or called Dystopia Tonight, dealing with MS. And out of the numerous guests that were on that, one of them was Mike Cosgrove, the drummer for this band. So I got it. There was at least one charity-centric thing that one member of this band did at some point.
Done.
Oh, man, that was tough.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Of course.
And so now we're going to get into some mean stuff.
Oh.
And
This was easy.
these were easy to find.
Oh, no.
In December of that same year, so of 2022, December 30th, Dryden Mitchell was charged with battery after an incident at an Alien Ant Farm concert in Fort Lauderdale's Broward Center.
Well, where else?
And this happened on October 29th. It was alleged, and by alleged, I mean I watched the video of it happening, but alleged,
sure.
that Dryden Mitchell grabbed the hand of a male audience member and forced it to touch his genitals on stage. And then 2 days later, the guy filed a police report, and then the battery was charged. I couldn't find the outcome of that, but it also only was 2022, so that could still be going on.
Sure.
I mean, I know court cases take a long time.
Yeah.
Just a second one, because that's just one member of the band. I thought that's rude to just call out Dryden Mitchell.
Of course, yeah.
In 2016, Terry Corso, the guitarist for the band, pled guilty to assaulting a fan at a live show. The audience member had thrown liquid at the musician, who instantly assumed it was urine. And he felt so angry he confronted the fan and ended up hitting him. And then he was quoted as saying he regrets his actions and says he never should have jumped off the stage.
True. Also, never throw something on another person. Never throw
But
liquid on another person either. Both of them
I
should be charged for.
I fully agree with you. The one line that bothers me there is, why would you just assume it was urine?
That's
You're
is
at
this
a
a
live
common
show.
thing?
Like,
Is this like, oh, those
it's
kids
much more
throwing
common
urine all
for it to
over
be
me
like
again?
water or beer or
I would have
alcohol.
assumed water or beer.
Yeah. Just instantly when that dude threw urine at me.
Unless it was very warm.
Maybe. I don't know. I thought it was weird. Those were the two meanest things I saw members of the band doing. Everyone else seemed either fine or less public.
Very good.
And then my 6 degrees, which I'm going to use it just once because fun fact, for a long time, our mixer wasn't letting me do drops or sound drops and stuff. So I've got a new mixer at this point. And finally, for the first time in like 2 seasons, that was our old 6 degrees of Totem Talk sound. We would always find one and slip it in. And now that it's more integrated into our notes, we're not going to use that anymore.
Correct.
But just for the lulls, I had to do it once.
Yeah, that was nice.
So for Alien Ant Farm, their third album, which was called Truant, which we didn't cover, but it was produced by brothers Robert and Dean DeLeo.
Oh, I know who they are.
You know who they are, and our audience may recognize them if they listen to our episode on Stone Temple Pilots.
Yes.
So they are in Stone Temple Pilots. They produced that album, 6 Degrees of Totem Talks, and that's my time.
Excellent. So it's time to move on to Scorpions.
I was going to make a scorpion sound, and I don't know what that is. I would assume it's a hiss, but it couldn't be a hiss.
I don't think they make a sound.
Right. Probably not, but I think of like poisonous creatures and think hiss.
Sure. If they do make a sound, I would imagine it's like, I don't think they have like vocal cords or anything. It would be like a body sound, like some kind of rattle.
There's definitely like a clack, like a...
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, I can hear that. All right, let me pee and get another beverage.
Okay. All right. Highly recommend that you drink your water, everybody. Very important to do. Fun fact, if you just Google Scorpions, you don't immediately get the band. Just a bunch of pictures of scorpions. Oh, all right. Oh, Nick, always peeing. The man is always peeing. I see we have a couple viewers and no comments. So I just want to, if you are commenting at any point, I am very sorry that they're not showing up on my screen. We had that happen a couple weeks ago, and it was unfortunate. So if it's happening again, I'm sorry. If you're not commenting, don't feel the need to comment. Happy enough to see you listening. Or watching, I guess. Or listening. Who knows? I certainly don't, because I'm not with you. Or am I? Oh, I hear Nick's voice. His dulcet, sultry tones. Oh, more apple juice. I'm jealous.
I have returned.
Nice. I was telling them I was jealous of your apple juice.
Who are you telling?
Just them. Just who they.
Yeah, they.
Everyone. No one, you know.
Yes, of course. I know.
All right.
All right. You tell me when.
How about if I tell you now?
3, 2, 1.
Scorpions are a German hard rock band formed in Hanover in 1965 by guitarist Rudolf Schenker. And they have been active from 1965 to the present day. We covered 3 albums by Scorpions. We started with Lonesome Crow, which came out in 1972 in West Germany and 1973 in the United States. Followed that up with Love at First Sting, which came out in 1984. And spoiler alert, yes, it did. And we've closed things out with Rock Believer, which came out, which I love the way they phrase this on their wiki page, which was released February 22nd of 2022 in the UK and February 25th, 2022 elsewhere.
Yeah, everywhere else.
Just elsewhere.
You all had to wait. We had to wait.
Yeah, we had to wait 3 days.
What a torturous 3 days it was.
And Nick, this is your group, so take us away with Lonesome Crow.
I would love to. And here's the thing. If you're like me, you would have been shocked to see the year on this was 1972.
Sure.
Because when I think of Scorpions, I very much think of 80s Scorpions. All of their big hits, a certain sound that they have. Yeah. I was very ready for that glam metal Scorpions. And then it was 1972, and I was like, I wonder if this is going to be something I'm not expecting it to be. And it was. And that was so nice.
Yeah.
I really thought that this was going to be glam, but instead it was like very Uriah Heep adjacent. I think that's the best comparison we can make with artists that we've covered.
That's the one I wrote down.
And if you'll recall, we enjoyed Uriah Heep. We praised the majority of their work. I still enjoy Uriah Heep. I really enjoyed this album. I think it was cool psychedelic rock type writing, a little heavy, good guitar parts. The big thing that I was like, this is a band that like they needed an organist, man. They were just missing the organist. Where was the organist at? But overall, I really like it. Unfortunately, it's their only album with Michael Schenker. I'll get into that later. And he was only 16. Michael Schenker, the second guitarist, younger brother of Rudolf Schenker, was only 16 on this first album when they.
Wow.
And then he went and played with other groups pretty famously instead. He's very well known in the metal guitar sphere.
Interesting. Good to know. I'll tell you as I get into this group. I also had Uriah Heep as a comparison, although to be fair, I am a bigger fan of Bernie Shaw's vocal.
Okay.
That's all for me. I mean, I'll tell you that talent-wise, it is to the point where it is subjective.
Sure.
Because they're both talented.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to knock that at all. I can tell that we're at the point where it's just purely to my ear. I like Bernie Shaw voice.
I think the German accent does something for you.
Maybe. I don't know.
There have been other good vocalists that we've covered in the past who, while not great, were good, but had a German accent, and it kind of affected the way that they would sing in English just enough where it was like it felt off-ish to a native English speaker.
That is a possibility. I don't know. I didn't give it that kind of active thought on maybe that being the reason. But I can tell you that I was very surprised by this album as well. It's nothing like I thought Scorpions was going to be. It was very much in the psychedelic phase, and I didn't love it. I'm typically a little less in love with this genre of music than you are, especially given the fact that I was listening to it like at 8:30 in the morning and while I was working, and just like processing law documents while listening to this. I'm like, I feel like this should be more like a Friday night with some like fog in the room, we'll say.
Yeah.
Or maybe drinking an apple juice. Something else to cleanse the palate a little
while
bit.
shoveling snow.
That could work too. a nice snow. Were you at the Bills Stadium? shoveling
Yes,
snow?
yes, that's where it was.
Good. That's what I thought. I would assume
But
that
first I had to
over
shovel my driveway to get out so I could go.
to get out to get to Buffalo. Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, I did really enjoy a lot of it though. It's just not a genre of music that like I would gravitate towards most of the time.
Sure.
That's all. It's close to one though, and it's definitely one of those things where I I thought maybe they didn't rely enough on the vocal at times, even though I just mentioned that I like the other guy or the guy from Uriah Heep
But
a little
Klaus
more.
Meine has talent. Like,
Very
he
much,
can
very
he's
talented.
got range.
And I think honestly, what Love It First Sting does, and I'll go into Love It First
Mhm.
Sting here, what it does worse in terms of overall, like we're in the genre that we expect of Scorpions now, which is objectively their most famous sound, but a sound that
Yeah,
we both like a little less
correct.
than we like the psychedelic rock sound. And I know that we are of different opinions there, but I still like it more
Sure.
than I like the glam metal.
Correct.
What it does in terms of less interesting genre, it does in terms of much better vocal. Klaus Meine's vocal on this is much stronger, much less. I don't know. I don't know. It could be the accent because it's definitely less noticeable here as well. So
Yeah.
it could have been the strong accent in the first album. Whatever it was, I thought that it was a strong showing from him, and I thought that the album itself just was a glam metal album.
Mhm.
That's kind of the best I can say. Rocky Like a Hurricane's a hit. I'll be honest with you, it didn't set itself apart on this album other than the fact that I'd heard it before.
Sure.
It looks like it was a hit because it was one of the released singles from this album, and that's about it to me. It's an album that exists in the annals of glam metal.
Sure. And here's the thing. I think for me, who probably the disparity between those two genres is greater than it is for you, I have almost the same opinion that I had of Alien Ant Farm. This was something I knew I was not going to love going into it. This is a genre that I'm never going to want to revisit. This was not an album that I loved listening to, but it could have been way worse.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as glam metal goes, as far as glam metal acts that we've covered on the show, sign me back up for listening to Scorpions again, relative to some of those other artists who are doing it for sure. If we're listening to this type of album and I don't have to like quit on a song, if I'm like, yeah,
I
all the
get it.
songs kept me entertained from beginning to end, and they didn't like make me feel nauseous or anything.
Yeah,
This is not the kind of thing that would have turned me away from the genre, but I'll also never love it.
that you know of.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna keep listening and trying every
Yeah.
week, so I'll go into Rock Believer.
Do it.
And I will say this, Klaus Meine, he held up pretty well vocally.
Yeah,
I mean,
no
man
complaints.
sounds good. And here's the other thing. They got real famous off of that 80s sound, especially Love at First Thing, and they have not departed.
Nope.
This album just went right. It was like a straight line from Love at First Thing to Rock Believer.
Yeah.
And again, like, the good thing about that is what they were doing was the least offensive type of music in the genre in which they played. I don't mind listening to them. I genuinely did not dislike listening to Scorpions at any time this week, but I was bored out of my mind by this album because it was the same thing as the one we listened to before it.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing.
For me, it got to this is exactly my process going through this. I listened to them one after another as I was working because we did have to crunch just a little bit because we're doing it a day early.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the first song, and my first thought was, I'm assuming your first thought, Klaus Meine really holds up.
Mm-hmm.
He sounds good, like lyrically. Then it was, this is going to be the same as the last one.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm listening through them, and I got to like track 6 or 7. and realized that I completely did not hear the title track. My brain just stopped functioning.
Oh yeah.
So I had to go back and look because I need to at least listen to the
Uh-huh.
title track and make sure that I know what it sounds like. And I probably had to restart songs 4 or 5 times through this to know that because my brain just
Hmm.
at some point just stopped was like you've had enough, like just turn off and stop listening.
Yes.
And I had to be like, no, I'm working, please.
Right.
So I feel like that's enough of an opinion, right? Like it's good. This is music that like could play at a barbecue and I'd be
Yeah.
fine with it.
Sure.
And I would be like, oh, you're playing music, that's fine. And it's just not interesting enough for me to even ask the name of the song.
Yeah.
So great for a barbecue where like there's a party and you don't really care what's
You
on.
want music that doesn't offend anyone, but
Yeah,
also like doesn't distract them from socializing at the barbecue.
exactly. And I know that you're going to talk about stuff in your notes, but maybe it's good if you don't talk about, like not you, but like at the barbecue, maybe you don't bring up scorpions.
Sure. Okay. So let's talk scorpions.
Let's talk scorpions.
So I'm having a hard time figuring out what was unique about them exactly. I mean, I didn't have much trouble with much else. They were
Hmm.
extremely successful group, which we'll get into. And then I started thinking, like, how extremely successful? And so the conclusion I have come to after doing research on a handful of different websites, although I can't be 100% sure, I am like 99% sure. In terms of bands, not artists, but bands,
Yeah.
they are the highest selling band, German band in history. They have sold
Okay.
more records worldwide than any other band from Germany. There is one other artist who I just found out about through doing that research, and his name is James Last. Have you ever heard of him?
No. No.
Okay. Well, he is a German man who has allegedly sold 200 million albums worldwide.
No.
Yes, he was a
200
bassist.
million?
He was a bassist. He was a big band leader. He did a lot of like uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Soundtrack albums for films and
Okay.
things. He released, from what I found, at least like a solid 190 studio albums between his different bands as band leader, and a bunch of live albums and a bunch of soundtrack album and a bunch of
Okay.
compilation albums. So the man, I mean, it was almost to the level where if like one person bought each album, he would have sold 200 million.
Okay.
But he is the one artist who I found that could potentially have sold more albums worldwide than Scorpions, who is from Germany. So they are the band. That's why I was
What
specific
a
with that.
fascinating.
Who would have known?
And look at, I mean, I'll tell you what, just a fun fact about James Last. It goes to show you that you do not have to be American to retire to Florida because he passed away in 2015 at age 86
Good for
in
him.
Palm Beach.
Good for him. Okay, so I'll move on to my 6 degrees. I got a couple, and you won't be too surprised by some of them. One, for a while in the 70s, they had a guitarist named Uli John Roth. I think we've even brought him up on the podcast at times.
Okay.
And he was doing a side project called Electric Sun, which Clive Bunker, former Jethro Tull drummer, drummed for. Also, the origins of the band, when Rudolf Schenker was looking for people to find and recruit and put together the whole project. Obviously, his brother Michael was one of the people who he included,
Sure.
and he was playing at the time with Klaus Meine in a Led Zeppelin cover band.
Nice.
So two of them started out as Led Zeppelin, and you can hear in Klaus Meine's voice why
Yeah,
maybe he would be the kind of guy who sang Led Zeppelin songs.
that makes
Um,
sense.
yes, and then as a last little nugget, which is sort of just kind of a cool fact that I'm integrating here, they were the second Western band to ever play a concert in the USSR. Do you know who the first was?
The Beatles.
No.
I guessed.
No. Think back to Lonesome Crow.
Think back to Lonesome Crow.
The
Okay.
their fir
Scorpions.
so close. Who did we both immediately think of?
Uriah Heep.
Uriah Heep was the first band to ever play in the USSR, followed shortly by um, Scorpions.
Okay.
And that experience in the USSR is actually what triggers the highlight for Scorpions. Their biggest song that we did not cover, which is Wind of Change, which they wrote and released in 1990 after their time playing a concert in the USSR and the things that were going on. Obviously, the late 80s, early 90s was an interesting time to be observing what was going on in the USSR. And that single would go on to sell 14 million copies worldwide. It was extremely influential. It was extremely influential to a point where things got weird. So there is a whole podcast about, and apparently there's going to be a Hulu series about.
Oh.
Or at least in December 2020, they talked about it. So I don't know if it's still in production or if they just decided to nix it at this point, or if it came out and I just never saw it. There was a whole conspiracy rabbit hole about the song Wind of Change by Scorpions actually having been written by the CIA, as a way to help encourage a certain feeling about policies in the USSR and the disbanding of, and kind of the moving on from that point in history. There is no evidence whatsoever that the CIA wrote it, and Scorpions definitely wrote it. But
oh my gosh,
there was like a whole thing about it. So that was at least interesting.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So now I'll move on to their low light, which is different from the other things because it's not necessarily related. It didn't, just flow nicely from one to the other. This was the cover of their 1976 album, Virgin Killer, which has topped or come very close to topping the lists of worst album covers of all time. It very famously features like a young girl nude and like a fake crack in the glass look over the album that covers her genitals. It was not a very good idea.
I think that is a complete understatement, but yes, it featured a 10-year-old girl on the cover.
Correct.
Completely nude in a provocative pose.
Right.
With a cracked glass covering the genitals. And it is disturbing to say the least.
Right. And it was obviously immediately banned in a lot of places, and there was an alternative album cover, blah, blah, blah. So I read some of the interviews with band members about this from different times, and like should they have taken a stronger stand against this? Absolutely. Like, and several members have since said that they wish they had fought it much harder. I do want to make it clear, it was not like this was the band's artistic direction. This was not what the band had in mind. They did not pick this artwork out. Their record label essentially came up with the art, came up with the idea, wanted to cause controversy because they were trying to get them attention. And the band, I guess, just was like, yeah, I guess we're going to go along with that. I don't know how much power they felt like the record label had over them at that time, how much of a right they had to say no. I mean, at least in hindsight, multiple members have really expressed that they wish, how dumb of an idea it was and how they wished that they had just stood up and not made it happen. I just don't want to fully condemn the group when I think there's a little bit more to the story about who we should be condemning over it.
Yeah, I get it. This is the disturbing thing about Scorpions for me. So when we did Blind Faith, which features a disturbing album cover in its own right, again, these are not recommendations to look these up, folks. Sure. At your own risk, if you want to see what it looks like, you're welcome to. Both of these album covers are on the Wikipedia for the album cover. That's all I'll say. But it's up to you, and we're not recommending it. But they have a similar theme of a nude child on the front of the album. And I remember when I looked it up previously, I remember seeing like lists of the articles, and every one that I saw of controversial album covers that had the Blind Faith album cover had this album is the number one. And so
Sure.
finally
Yeah.
I like clicked it and was like, and I could see why. So
Mhm.
that's really, other than Rock You Like a Hurricane, this was the other thing I knew about
Sure.
Scorpions.
I would also like to be clear in terms of the actual song, the title track of the album, in no way reflects those themes at all.
No,
It
no.
is not
It's
at
very not,
all
yeah.
like it is not at all about that in any way. Um, so anyway, I will wrap things up with their meanest and nicest things, and it'll be nice to say some nice things here. But first, a mean one because I want to get all the bad out of the way and end on a nice note. And the meanest one is simply this. I mean, Michael Schenker left the group after one album. He was only with them for a very short period of time. Things could have been very different had he been in the group. Who knows how they would have evolved and changed.
Yeah,
Obviously, Michael Schenker had a very successful career in the early metal sphere of guitar with groups like UFO and the Michael Schenker group. Um, but he was so upset with what he felt like was the kind of brushing under the rug of his contributions to the first album in terms of writing credits that he left the group. He was writing a lot of these songs, or he was writing them just with Klaus,
yeah,
and then they would get listed as writing credits to Scorpions,
sure.
and he felt like the whole group was getting credit for something that they weren't fully contributing to as much as he was. So that's it.
Sure. I mean, and I'll tell you, like, that's a conversation, right? Like, that's a
Sure,
conversation that
yeah.
we had when we came out with our album. It's a conversation we either had or are going to have about our second album.
Sure.
I mean, we're luckily kind of all on the same page with it.
Mhm.
But it is interesting, like, what do you consider writing a song,
Yeah.
right? Like, you can theoretically say, like, for instance, and this is just like off the cuff,
Mhm.
for In Lifetime Left to Go, for Lifetime Left to Go, when I came to you, I had like the melody of the song
Mhm.
and then all of the lyrics, and like that's what I brought. And then
Right.
you provided what that instrumentation would sound like. We came up with, when we were going to start adding little instruments into the beginning and stuff during the recording
Mhm.
process. And then like Alex came up with the bass line for it. And then George, we didn't write the drum part for George. We didn't write
Correct.
the bass part for Alex. So like having them be contributed as writers felt fine to me.
Mhm.
But like I could, there are some people who may say like, well, because I came up with the melody, like I wrote the song. Or some
Mhm.
people that say like, well, I came up with the melody and the lyrics, and you came up with like the instrumentation, general instrumentation, so we wrote the song. And then so it's such a
It
murky water,
Yes, it
is what
is.
it boils
And it's
down
a
to.
shame, especially because Michael and Rudy were brothers,
Yeah,
you know? You hate
that's
to see
yeah
that.
for sure.
Alright, so let's get to the nicest things,
Hmm.
ended on a positive. So, one very recent one was in 2022. I was a little bit confused about the point that they were making here, but then I saw how it worked out, and it started to make sense. They did a benefit concert at Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
And it was like the way the headlines of the articles were making it sound, I was like, it was for Bangladesh. And I'm like, what happened in Bangladesh in 2022? But it was celebrating their 50th anniversary of independence
Oh, okay.
from Pakistan. And obviously, we know they also have had their fair share of natural disasters and
Yeah.
other issues, which George Harrison very famously created a whole benefit concert around. But they had like a Bangladeshi artist come up and join them for the concert. And it was all to raise money for UN programs that essentially help like developing nations around the world with important infrastructure things. So that was very nice that
Yeah.
they were involved in that.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing that I thought was really cool, and then also has a very nice aspect to it is their longtime bassist, Francis Buchholz.
You're
He
loving this.
Yeah. In 1978, he started a company that would just like lend out PA and amplifier, like all sorts of
Oh, yeah.
different stuff that like bands would need to go play gigs and tour and all that stuff. And partially part of the reason he did this was because he was like designing a certain type of speaker cabinet that he wanted other people to be able to use, and like kind of to develop his own technology. But the other reason he started this company was to employ all of the Scorpions roadies during the times when they were not touring. All
Oh,
he, like his
that's really
company
cool.
was their job when they weren't working for them on the road,
That
which
is
I
very
thought was
like
very cool.
uniquely cool.
Yeah. Once I
That's a
saw it, I
unique
wanted to
thing. You could
mention
have
it.
thrown
Yeah.
that in the unique.
True. True. But I thought it was also just a very nice thing to do
It
because,
is a very nice thing to do.
he was worried about his coworkers and he wanted to make sure that they were taken care of.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And that was everything.
That's everything. All right. Well, then I guess good night, Nick.
Yeah, good
Jeez.
night.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, this was fun. Oh, shorter episode than I
Yeah,
thought.
right. Oh, I guess we'll grade them.
Oh yeah, we should probably grade them. We should do that.
All right.
All right.
1 point for Alien Ant Farm.
1 point for Alien Ant Farm. I got nothing to give you an extra point.
Excellent.
1 point.
Scorpions. I will give a little bit of background and resume.
Okay.
Any group that has sold 100 million plus records is going to do pretty well here, even if they weren't as big as in the United States as they were everywhere else.
Sure.
They have won 3 World Music Awards.
Mhm.
They have their star on the Hollywood Rock Wall of Fame. They have, even though they're not inducted, which is honestly, after doing the research this week, even though I don't love them, crazy. They're not inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is a band that I think needs to be in based on their worldwide success.
Yeah.
And, like, pretty prominent hits and influence in different genres. But they do have a permanent exhibition at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame dedicated to them.
What?
Yes.
That's a
so
weird.
There's a permanent exhibition, but they are not in.
Okay. Sure.
And I'll say I am not the world's biggest Scorpions fan. They should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, I might not have said that before I did all the research on them, but now that I know what I know, like, come on.
I understand. I can't fault you for thinking it. Again, you did all the research. You knew all of it going in. So my opinion is just starting to change from
Sure.
one hit plus that album cover.
Yeah.
So
no,
they're more than that for
they're
sure.
way more than that. A lot of like certifications all over the world, album after album after album. I mean, arguably one of, if like, they would obviously be in the top like 2 or 3 German groups of all time.
Yeah.
One of the biggest European groups.
James Last, though.
Like James Last. Yeah, he is. Yeah, I mean, like I said, excluding like England and the United States, one of the biggest artists to come out of not those 2 places, like mainland Europe. There.
Understood. So what are you thinking? What's a number for you?
I mean, I think the number's got to be close to like 7, right? Like, how do you sell 100 million records and not get there? Like, I think we got to put aside the fact that they weren't nearly as big in the United States with just all of the other evidence around the world.
I mean, here's what I'll say. You probably lose a little bit for lack of mainstream success in America, and like you're not hitting the same realm that like large bands who are able to break into one of the largest music markets in the world.
Right. You definitely want to break in here. But if you don't and still manage to sell
again,
plus albums,
I'm saying that like
you must be killing it everywhere else.
And they definitely were. It's like one of those things where if you're the best player in like the XFL,
Sure.
for comparison. Like, you want to be in the NFL to really be big, but you'll probably still be pretty all right.
I mean,
But
they
I
did
think,
have 5 top 40 US albums, to be
sure.
clear.
And again, this is not a knock at all. And I'm not arguing, I'm not arguing out of the high sixes here, which we're leaning around there anyway. I'm just saying that, like, if this group was also proportionately famous in the, like, United States, we could
Definitely
be
help.
talking like maybe a full point higher.
Yeah. I mean, I am struggling to go under a 7. I would struggle. Like,
I
7
would
is
be
where what I'm looking at is like a floor.
okay. Yeah, so we can go in the low sevens and then average out. I was thinking like a 6.8 or a 6.9. So
Well,
I'm not
just give
far
me
from
a
you.
7,
If you
and
want a
I'll be
seven as the
happy.
floor, that's fine.
Breadth of work. Alien Ant Farm. 5 albums, 4.3. Enough sales on Smooth Criminal that I think we kind of let them
We
hang
can
out
leave
where
them
they're at.
alone. And I will say, just to be fair, it's not getting averaged into the score because it's not released yet. But apparently this year their sixth album is coming out, which does hit our average.
And then we'll get
So
them up
they're
to a
very
5.
close.
Yeah, and if by some miracle it sells millions of uh,
Yeah, I mean, that would be wild.
it would. But you never know.
They
What
just
would
release like Beat It or cover a
yeah,
Beat It.
yeah, sure, why not? Look, it's your artist. What do you want to do with them?
I struggled here for a bit because I mean I thought about this like going in like what am I going to give or take away point wise. I think I'm just going to kind of leave them. I think like they do a genre of music that I don't love decently,
Mm-hmm.
and they had one big hit, and I'm not going to take away any points for like the kind of fiddle sticking around in the first album or the nickel backing of the third album, and that's all going to get washed away from the second album, which I thought was very complete.
Yeah, at the end of the day, my reasoning is similar to yours. I might have knocked them points for the third album, but they did a good enough job at making me tolerate something I don't like before
Yeah.
that I'm just going to leave them alone.
Yep.
And I knew that I didn't want to give Scorpions more than a 0.1, but I also knew that I liked Scorpions more than Alien Ant Farm.
That's fair.
In total. Which brings me to Scorpions, who have 19 albums, start with a 6.1. And have 100 million plus albums sold, which is going to start by giving them a minimum of a full point.
Yeah, and that's what we so we're every 50 million albums you get a 0.5. So for 100 million you get a full point.
Right.
And that's I mean so they're starting pretty high.
Yeah, and I give them a 0.1 because I liked the first album, and if all 3 albums were like the first album, they probably would have gotten more like a 0.3.
Sure, and I'll give them a 0.02, which will average down to nothing. But I thought like I was getting so bored by the end of the last album. Just having it be a good version of what glam metal could become 20, 30, 40 years later is not good enough for me to do anything about it. And I think just leaving them at an even score for me is fine.
And also, I did some research. My research led me to believe that they probably have 5 or 6 albums that are more like the first one, which is also leading me to believe that based on what I know about this season, they're very likely to make a reappearance with one of those albums.
I can tell you which one it's not going to be.
I can tell you which one is widely critically reviewed as the best album that came out.
I can tell you which one I'm not putting on this album.
Thing.
I'm telling you heard it here first.
I'm going to listen to it because it was like really well reviewed.
You heard it here first, folks. If Nick tries to include Virgin Killer on Best of the Rest, I'm not.
But I am going to listen to it.
That's fine. I can't do it.
Even though
the album cover is different. Yeah, I know. But like there's just so much like whenever you listen to that album, right? You're generating revenue for the group. Just like I guess I was talking about it is doing the same thing. I just would like to make the studio think like even though the people who did that decision are all dead now, I'm sure. Just think about it. Think about it a little harder next time.
I don't think anything like that would ever happen again, to be fair.
You you and I can both hope.
Yes.
But
All right. Instrumental talent. I think both of these bands get good scores.
I agree.
They are both good. To me, I'm going to give the edge to Scorpions again. But they're both above
We want to be
average.
careful here. I think it's closer than we would give it credit for. I think the vocals lean a little more Scorpions, and I do agree that maybe overall, but Alien Ant Farm is just performing a genre that's slightly less showy.
Definitely they are. And I think to some extent that just has to count. Like if you're playing a version of metal that is more riff and heavy chord based versus a version that is allows you to showcase your talents and ability,
Yeah.
like if you're just showing that you have more talents and ability because
Yeah.
that's the style of song. And for Scorpions, again, my number's probably in that 7 range. Um, feeling pretty consistent with them so far. It's definitely a good point above average. Alien Ant Farm, I would probably be in the high 5s to low 6s area for.
Okay.
And that's what I think.
Honestly, I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Do you have a preference for Alien Ant Farm?
I think for Alien Ant Farm, they're definitely above average in what they're doing. I think they're all strong. Like I said, the bass was good on the first album, like more so than I kind of expected with that genre. And I think Dryden Mitchell's a good singer who
Mhm.
gets to showcase it less than I would like in the first album, but more throughout the rest of the other two. I think this is a group that's like probably in like the 5.5 or above range. They're
Did you
not
not
like,
hear me tell you I had my number in the high 5s to low 6s, and then I asked you which spot in there you would like?
yeah, no, I'm saying where my numbers are.
Okay.
I said like I would be thinking in the 5.5 range and a little above, and my number is a 5.8.
I already typed it in.
You didn't let me finish my
I already
sentence,
typed it in.
Nicholas.
Scorpions, I am again in the 7s. That from there, I will let you make your decision. I mean, like love or hate glam metal, it does take some pretty special guitarists to do some of the things that they do. And I say that as someone who generally hates the genre. I think Klaus Meine, again, the fact that he came from a Led Zeppelin cover band really shows.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
dude has crazy range. So where in the 7s are you comfortable? And I'll let you have it.
I think for me, I would be under a 7.5, but only barely.
Okay. 7-4 it is.
Yeah,
Songwriting. Okay, we're factoring in for Alien Ant Farm that they haven't had the average number of albums. That
for
brings
sure.
them down a little bit. We're factoring in to some extent that their biggest hit is a cover and they didn't technically write it, but they did very much do their own thing with it,
Yes,
which is ideal.
is
Um,
very ideal. It's the way you want to do it if it's your only hit.
yeah. In which case, I would honestly would have been close to average for them for the first couple albums, and I would have definitely been under for the third. So
Yeah,
if we're saying we're starting at a 4.3 for the 5 albums, I'm closer to just like a 4. I don't know about you.
I think that's fair. I think a 4 is good.
Okay.
I think a
And
4 is
then
good. I think it's
yeah.
good stuff.
And then Scorpions, I, again, like I don't like a lot of what they're famous for, but they did it as well as anybody. And they did it after they had already established themselves in a different genre. So to do two things very capably, it I think automatically qualifies you for an above average score.
Yeah.
Um, it's a little samey because that's how glam metal is, so it's not a way above average score. But the individual songs were good enough that I, a perpetual hater of the genre, didn't feel like I needed to skip them or move through them.
Sure.
And I thought they, again, not rising to the level of Uriah Heep, Iron Butterfly, Deep Purple, did the psychedelic heavy proto metal thing pretty well too in the early 70s. So
Yeah.
I'm like a 5.3, 5.4 type of area.
See, for me, like a ton of albums,
Sure.
so that helps them. And then the first few
If
apparently
you're gonna
being
argue me up, I'm totally fine with it.
well, the
I
first
was
few
just
being different and stuff are good. Just the fact that we had Love at First Sting and then Rock Believer, and other than the sound of his voice changing, I could have believed that was one long deluxe
mhm,
album. Is not a great thing for me.
great.
It's
That's why I'm
such
keeping
a
them under
huge
5.5.
yeah. I guess I mean I guess giving them that for the number makes sense. I'm fine with like a 5.3, 5.4. That's fine.
Okay, well, I'll leave it at 5.3, and we'll move on to Poetic.
Yeah.
Again, maxing out at 4.3 here for Alien Ant Farm. I had a hard time with the third album, but not as hard
Yeah.
of a time as I've had with other artists.
No,
Not stuff I'm taking tons of points away for.
this is
Again, I'm like
totally
slightly. I would be like in the high fours if this was a band with full discography.
as far as I was concerned listening to this, my score out of 5, like out of an average band with 5 being the average considering the album total, I would have been right at like a 4.9 because their big hit was a cover lyrically.
Yeah,
And so for that reason I'm at a 4.2
and you can have it.
mathematically.
And Scorpions, I don't know. I mean, like I mostly didn't notice them. There could have been some like a little late album grandpa cringe by the last
Yeah.
one. But like I was zoning on the music so much. I would be comfortable again, very, very close to the average here.
Yeah.
So I would either give them like a 5, or you can argue me either way. But I'm about to just like sit there.
I mean, here's the thing for me. It gets a little cheesy.
4 it is. 3, 2.
It gets a little cheesy. Like I think maybe like a 4.9 again, just a little under the average. Like when you get that schmaltzy on the like I know it's 80s and I know it
Yeah.
is schmaltzy, but it's just like it's there was so much of it. So
No,
much.
I totally get you. X Factor, do you have something for Alien Ant Farm?
I don't. I mean I was looking, I don't really have anything for
Okay.
them. They just kind of had the
Yeah.
one big hit.
Right. I mean, for Scorpions, I don't think it's anything I haven't said already. If there's X Factor there, it's them being like the biggest band from Germany in terms of sales. It's the song written by the CIA with four. I think there might be some precedent for us giving a little X Factor to bands with singles that have sold over 10 million copies.
Sure.
So 14 million is definitely something worth considering here. It could be the 3 World Music Awards or the
There's points here. There's a
yeah.
little
I
bit
mean,
here.
I think there's something.
Yeah, I agree. What do you want to give them?
I could give them like a little less than 1, but like a 0.8 or so.
Let's give them a 0.8. How about a 0.8?
0.8 it is. And I have final scores for you then. And
I'm
boy, did
ready.
it come down to the wire. Winning this week's episode. Oh, he doesn't say the thing. Oh, no.
No, I don't have it.
Is Scorpions with a
That
final
makes
score,
sense.
of 32.6.
Yeah, that's good for them. I
Not
mean, good
necessarily
for
what I
them.
would have thought coming in, but
No.
now I realize that they definitely are a band that deserves a score in the 30s for us based on
Yeah.
their victory. And then in second place was Alien Ant Farm with a 19.3. Yeah, they almost cracked the 20, and you know what? They will crack the 20 when they
That's true.
release the sixth album.
Whenever Mantras releases,
Exactly.
they'll break into the 20s for moving
Yes,
just slightly higher on all their
just
stuff.
a little bit. And I'll say this: next week, you should come back and join us because we are going to take a little look at pop music now and then. So we're going to be comparing pop artists who are many decades separated in time to see how the genre has evolved.
I love that. I love that. That's a good idea, Nick. I'm glad you came up with it.
Yeah, I know. I'm a genius.
You
Very
are
stable.
and so modest.
Very stable genius.
Oh
The
yeah,
stablest.
all Geni are very.
You could
stable.
fit so many horses in here because of how stable it is.
Oh man. and a comedian as well. You're so funny. Listen, thank you everybody for coming and hanging out with us. An interesting one as always.
It was.
And I can't wait to see you all next week.
Oh boy.
And I want for all 7 days that you're without us, I want you to make sure that you have a great day. Cool.
Great job.
You too, buddy.
I have a 2-inch micro penis.
Great job.
Great job, George.
Sorry. What was that?
Yeah.
You can tell me. We just finished. Oh yeah, go ahead. I can come up a little later. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, next week.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll do her. I got it. I know you don't want to.
I was gonna say either way, it doesn't matter.
You don't want to cover her.
I don't really care either way. Either way, again, this is an artist where the only things I know are not good things. So if I cover her, it's gonna be I'm gonna slam her. I don't know.
There's no need to slam her.
Okay. I mean, everything I've ever read or heard about her is that she is like an intentional home wrecker, a cokehead, terrible to everyone in her presence all the time.
There are things to talk about.
I don't know anything about her personally, other than that, like, everything I've ever read about her is that she is a really shitty person.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard conflicting reports on a lot of that stuff.
Okay, I have not. I've just
yeah.
been inundated with shitty person, shitty person,
Sure.
shitty person.
Well, maybe when I do my research, I'll either come to light on that being all true, or I'll find some refuting and we'll have a different opinion by the end of the week.
Certainly possible.
That's what's important.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I get to go eat some beef jerky because I have to eat high protein today.
Do you want some of the
yeah,
cheddar jalapeno? Yeah. I'll have a piece in solidarity.
Oh, thanks, man. I've been holding it in my pocket because I've been waiting. I need to eat it because I got the thing done before we started.
Right.
So I'm eating teriyaki. So it's a less interesting flavor than yours, but still good.
Never heard of her. What was her last name again? Terry what?
Teriyaki?
Teriyaki.
Yeah.
I don't know the Yakis.
One of the better Terrys.
Telling Terry Hatcher you said that.
I didn't say she wasn't also one of the better Terrys.
Telling Terry McLaurin you said that.
If he was wearing a different jersey, I'd be in love with him. Although I don't know if he'd fit here. Adrian Devontae, though. I mean, what's he going to be? He's not going to be the Quez Watkins of this group. We shouldn't even have Quez Watkins as the Quez Watkins of this group.
No, Julio Jones should be the Quez Watkins of the group.
He looked real good for 2 plays and then died.
And then died. Yep.
I saw it too. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you thought it, but I saw that hit and saw him go.
Stumble back.
And then go forward again. I was like, he's done.
Uh-oh.
Out.
Yep.
He's going to get evaluated. He's got a concussion.
Oh, yeah.
Which, glad it wasn't a worse injury for him.
Agreed.
I also feel like it's weird we haven't heard any updates on Darius Slay. Because he got, like, hurt, like, carded. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard anything. It's Wednesday.
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe we'll hear something soon.
Exit interviews are definitely done. Let's see. Yeah. It'll be all over if it happened.
True.
You know, he's trending on Twitter.
Sirianni?
Yeah. Nothing's been out.
Okay, everybody's just talking about it.
Everybody's talking about the exit interview, and then everybody's talking about Fletch and Jason Kelsey both defending him publicly.
Okay.
So nothing's been released yet. Whether that is good for Sirianni or not, I don't know. I'll tell you what, though. Until they break my heart as they do every season, they're having a very good season right now. The Sixers, not
Oh.
Eagles.
I was
You
like,
weren't looking at me pointing my hat.
no. I was looking at a different tab on Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, no. The Sixers played the Nuggets, the defending champion Nuggets, last night.
And
as per usual, Joel Embiid, if you're not watching the games, I'm not even joking when I say this. In my lifetime, he's the best Sixer I've ever seen.
I am not surprised
Physically
by that.
play. He's incredible. I watched a 7-foot tall man Euro step like a point guard, and then 2 plays later, drop a 3 over Nikola Jokic. Like him and Jokic were basically, I mean, it was such a great battle last night, like a big man battle, like classic big man battle. You never really get to see them in the NBA anymore. And it was such a good matchup. We were tied in the 4th. And then Jokic and Embiid were both like resting for like literally like a minute. Then they both they showed the video of Jokic popping up and Joel looking over, seeing him and immediately popping up. They come into the game at the same time. And Joel Embiid scores the next 11 straight points for the Sixers and dominates.
Yeah, I see he is averaging 35 and 11 and a half for the season so far.
He won MVP last year, and his stats this year make last year look like a bad season.
Yeah.
It's crazy. He's doing it all also playing like 3 quarters for most games. Because we're just he's just so good. Like he's doing all that in 3 quarters and then sitting for the whole 4th, just resting his body. It's crazy to watch, man. I don't know what it translates to in the play. I don't know any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to be like, we got it. I'm not going to do that. But it's fun to watch the Sixers right now.
Sure.
And I needed fun after watching the Eagles for the last 7 weeks.
Yeah.
It's nice when the Sixers do well. I mean, the Flyers too, honestly. I don't really watch much hockey, but it's nice to hear that they're doing well, because right now, if they weren't doing well, I'd be in the it's January and baseball starts in April. Okay. Like, I don't have to be in the holding pattern because I can watch sports and enjoy them.
Sure.
Other than I'll still watch the playoffs.
Sure. Hockey was the first sport that I got into as a kid. It's the only sport that I think is better in person.
It is far better in person.
It is electric in person to watch. And
and
playoff hockey is electric to watch even on TV, I think. I think hockey it's just so nonstop that it is exciting to watch. If you have a team that's not very good, and we grew up with pretty good Flyers teams that were exciting to watch. John LeClair and what's his face? Number
Lindros.
8, Mark Recchi, Eric Lindros, Keith Primo, Chemo Timonen.
A lot of good. And then we had Claude Giroux for a lot of time. I mean,
sure.
Worse Flyers team, but you could always root for the player.
Yeah.
The Flyer teams were struggling there, although they did. I mean, they went to the finals.
Yeah, in 2010.
In 2010, so. It's good that they're playing well. I mean, I love that the whole city rallied around the Flyers over that whole Cutter Gauthier thing. I don't know if you read up on that.
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't? Oh, I get to tell you this. Great. So Cutter Gauthier was a player that we drafted.
Okay, this is the first time ever hearing his name.
Was very excited to play for us. To blah, 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 blah. Like he's 19 years old right now as a kid, who just refused to meet with the team or practice or play in any development camps. All of a sudden, it comes out he doesn't want to play for us. It was all kept under wraps. He was just ignoring calls from all of the front office of the Flyers. Just like literally, he lives in Sweden. And the Danny Briere and I don't know if Keith Jones himself, but members of the team, like important members of the organization, flew to Sweden and could not get a meeting with him. And so they traded him to the Ducks, to Anaheim.
Yeah. I
know. They traded him to Anaheim for a guy who came in and is like, yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Like, super awesome. Like in his first game, scored an assist and then scored a goal in the second game, and is now a beloved Flyer for basically for not being a prick.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Wild.
Like, I mean, like full on. Like, I don't know. I can't remember a player doing that since like JD Drew.
Sure.
Just like being like an absolute.
Eli Manning.
I meant for us. Like, I meant for a Philly team. Like JD Drew did it for the Phillies.
Yeah. Well, that's why you get batteries thrown at you. Which,
good luck.
No doubt, this guy will get batteries thrown at him.
I literally said, I was like, wow, it's been a while since like the Flyers have hated somebody this much, like since Crosby. Like Crosby's going to pass the torch to Cutter Gauthier. Mm-hmm. I know, but I meant like, his career is. I mean, he's not
on the decline. Yeah,
he's on the decline. He's still good. He's still a good player that I hate.
Yeah,
because he's who he is. But he was one of those players because we hated him because of who he played for, and he was kind of full of himself.
Yeah,
this kid we're gonna hate because of what he did.
True.
That's it. And like a lot of, I mean, like the Flyers, like front office are the ones who told all this stuff afterwards. Like, and they were just like, they literally said like, I want to give a big thank you to the front offices of the teams we talked to during this process for being like really upstanding members of the organizations and not leaking all of this to the press because we wanted to keep it under wraps for Cutter.
Oh, wow.
Until after this was all done, because otherwise they want him to still have like a chance to play.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, okay, I hope he has a very unsuccessful career.
Agreed. Okay, that was the call I'm getting that my dinner is ready.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm rooting for you to enjoy your dinner.
I appreciate
as
that.
much as I'm rooting for Cutter Gauthier to not have a great
I will
career.
Say this. Sidney Crosby, 42 games, 46 points plus 19. So he's still playing pretty well.
Oh, listen,
26 goals, 20 assists.
As much as I don't like Sidney Crosby, I will not knock that he's a good player.
Definitely not.
I mean,
who I always hated the most, other than Crosby, who then the Flyers counteracted by bringing onto the team.
Oh,
Jaromir Jagr. Oh my god, I hated him so much as like a Ranger and a Penguin. And,
it is what it is, right?
Yeah, right. And then the only other person I think like some wings or some Devils like Marty Brodeur.
Well, I mean, guy. If you look at baseball, like before Bryce Harper came here and he played for the Nationals, hated him.
Yep,
hated him for the Nationals because he was successful.
Yeah,
but that was it. Like if Sidney Crosby came and put on like black and orange 5 or 6 years ago,
right?
I'm sure the city would have rallied around him at some point. Yeah. It's just the fact that who he plays for, where it's like, no, we want you to fail, and you don't, and we're mad at that. Sure. So it'd be nice to hate a Flyer or an ex-Flyer who earned it.
Because he's just a bad guy.
Yeah, bad guy.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Go eat your dinner. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Adios.
All right, peeps. Thanks for hanging out. As always. Next week, I think we can get it on Thursday. I'm confident that we'll get it on. So join us next Thursday. I'm hoping. We'll see. But thanks for hanging out, everybody. Stay safe. Have a great year. Have a great day, and all that fun stuff.